Everything has problems if you look hard enough. But fortune favors the bold. It's time to show the world what we've done.
If fortune truly does favor the bold, then we're in for a real treat. Anyways, welcome back, true believers and all you spectacular Spidey fans, to another really exciting Spider-Man PS4 related video. And just in case you want a little something extra, I highly recommend that you wait until the very end of the video to learn more about the current photo mode competition that is occurring within the Spidey Squad community. But as for the main topic of today's video, we are going to be talking about the really interesting developments of Spider-Man PS4's sequel and the most likely possibility that it will in fact become a PS5 launch title. So as we all know already, Spider-Man PS4 has done incredibly well with critic and fan reviews, as well as sold amazingly well worldwide. And alongside of all the praise that Marvel and Insomniac have gained through Spider-Man PS4, the brand of PlayStation itself has also majorly prospered due to Spider-Man PS4 as a whole. And because of this, it would obviously make sense that Marvel, Insomniac, and Sony would want to continue Spider-Man's franchise on the future of PlayStation. And even though certain developers from both Marvel and Insomniac have been extremely coy when answering fans' questions about a sequel, specifically with this one tweet from Jacinda Chu with a really funny Muppets gif, I still think a sequel for the game is currently in development. And given this recent news update from Push Square, which is a very reliable source to all things PlayStation, I do think that this definitely solidifies the fact that a sequel for Spider-Man PS4 is currently in the works. However, if it were to be made, it might just end up being a PlayStation 5 launch title. And this first article mainly relates to the next wave of future games within the next generation consoles. And it states, Sony first-party studios now mostly focused on PS5. The future is happening. It comes as no real surprise to hear, but most of Sony's first-party studios have now shifted their focus to the PS5. This is mainly according to industry analyst Daniel Ahmad. Ahmad has been a reliable source of inside info for years now, so we've got little reason to doubt his claims. In general, most of the focus for Sony first-party is on PS5 right now, he writes, summarizing the Japanese giant's plans for 2019. Again, it's not surprising to hear this. We have to imagine that developers like Guerrilla Games started thinking about next-gen as soon as Horizon Zero Dawn shipped, while long-awaited titles such as The Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima, and Death Stranding have surely been considered for the PS5. Things get a little more complex, however, when Ahmad brings up a couple of unannounced games, already existing IP with PS4 in mind. Now, if you are in the know regarding which companies are owned by Sony, you know this will be a bit different within Insomniac's case. So, for example, one of the first-party studios mentioned within this article is obviously Naughty Dog, and that is because every game they make is indeed a Sony published product which will only be ever on the PlayStation consoles. However, in Insomniac Games' case, they are a third-party studio which makes first-party games, meaning that any game that Insomniac makes from their own studio can be featured on any platform of their choosing. And mainly in the case of Spider-Man PS4, the game itself is a first-party product made by a third-party studio. So even though this article technically says that every single Sony first-party studio is receiving the gear to work on PS5 games, I still think that might be in the same case of Insomniac working on a first-party title. If a second Spider-Man game from Insomniac was currently being made, I do think it would be a PlayStation 5 launch title, since it would be a great point to start off selling those consoles just like they did for the PlayStation 4 itself. And given that the majority of these top-tier developers are focusing their shift on developing their new games on the future consoles, I definitely think that adds on to my point. And given how great Spider-Man was on the PS4, I can only imagine what the sequel is going to be like on the PS5. But even though this isn't officially confirmed, I still think it is a great marketing plan from Sony if this was the case, given how great the PS4 Pro sold of Spider-Man PS4. If they were to do the same thing with making a PlayStation 5 bundle of Spider-Man, that would just be absolutely insane. And knowing that other Sony titles like The Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima, and Death Stranding might just release on the PS5 as well, I definitely think that adds to the point that I'm making. But what solidifies these points even more is the crazy update that Sony have filed out for a patent possibly implementing a backwards compatibility feature for the PlayStation 5 console. And just like this Push Square article states, PS5 backwards compatibility suggested by Sony patent. All previous PlayStation consoles are covered. Supposedly, the newly devised system, as authorized by Mark Cerny, the guy who designed the PlayStation 4, PS4 will allow the PS5 to run all previous PlayStation software. And yes, in theory, that covers the PS1, PS2, PS3, and PS4 games. And even though this might sound too good to be true, that's why Sony is labeling it as a patent. As we all know by this point, companies like Sony register patents all the time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll ever be applied in reality. Still, this one's a very interesting find, especially since the PS5 is just around the corner. And as you're seeing on screen right now, this is a proposed flowchart as to what the PlayStation 5 system will appear to run like once it's actually released. And to explain this supposed backwards compatibility feature on the PlayStation 5 in a way that makes sense, it essentially allows the PS5 to mimic the behavior of previous consoles using multiple processors. So in other words, when an old game is booted up in the PS5 system, so for example Ultimate Spider-Man for the PS2, the PS5 then tricks the software into thinking that it's running on its original device. And if this does turn out to be true, it is going to be a really ambitious feat that Sony will accomplish. And as for someone who can back up these points is a man named John Lyman, who is a writer for Digital Foundry, and Eurogamer, who is a really intellectual person within the video gaming industry. And as for the backwards compatibility feature itself, some people actually may think it is a farce from Sony, mainly regarding the Colt Eastwood's Twitter post here, who says, "Who here thinks that PS5 will be backwards compatible for PS4 games?" And in a really interesting reply, John actually says it will absolutely have this, zero question. And given how accurate John has been in the past regarding other gaming consoles, I do think this is one important point to take into consideration. And even though it isn't 100% guaranteed that these backwards compatibility features will work, I do think it is very likely given the patent that Sony has filed as well as John's statements. This would not only mean that Spider-Man PS4 sequel would allow the PS5 to sell like hotcakes, but it would also mean that every single previous Spider-Man game in the past on other PlayStation consoles could be playable on the PS5. And yes, this would include the classics like Spider-Man 2000, Spider-Man 2, Enter Electro, the entirety of the Raimi trilogy of video games, as well as all of Beanox's games, and of course Ultimate Spider-Man. Not to mention the cult classic of Spider-Man Friend or Foe, as well as my previous favorite Spidey game of Web of Shadows. So if we were to have Marvel's Spider-Man sequel be featured as a PS5 launch title, along with every past Spider-Man game to be played on that console as well, Sony is going to be making a lot of money come time when this releases. And even though we don't know if it'll release sometime in 2020 or 2021, I do think it will take a long time for Sony to fully develop this console, but still, we'll just have to wait and see for any future developments. But with all that exciting news out of the way, everyone, that's the video that I have for you today, and please let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. What do you think of Sony's developments within the PlayStation brand, and do you think that Marvel's Spider-Man sequel will indeed be a PlayStation 5 launch title given all this really intriguing news? Seeing how wonderful Marvel's Spider-Man was on the PS4, I definitely think if it were to be a PS5 launch title, it's going to be even bigger and better than what the first game was. And if that backwards compatibility feature does end up being true, that's just going to be one heck of a fun time for every PlayStation owner who gets a PS5. And moving on to the bonus feature that I mentioned for the video is obviously regarding the Spidey Squad's community photo mode competition that is occurring within the game. So in case you missed it, the Spidey Squad have been running a very awesome photo mode competition which you yourself can partake in regarding Spider-Man PS4. And just so you all recall, each week will focus around a new suit that you can take photos of, with the first week mainly regarding the advanced suit. But since that week is over, we did decide the main winner of that competition, which awesomely goes to @SpideyFrenzy with this amazing shot of Spidey taking down a thug. And with huge congratulations to Spidey Frenzy's awesome shot, we did move on to week 2 featuring Spider-Man Noir and a awesome black and white filter shot that you can take within the game. Although this time around, we did pick 4 awesome individuals' photos that did represent the Noir suit in a really great way. And this mainly relates to the amazing individuals @Jimenez Miles, as well as @MikeHart55, and of course @Romero_Dylan2003, and ending it with @SpoodermanDocGuy. So huge congratulations to all the photo mode winners for having such amazing shots and showing off Spider-Man PS4 in an incredibly awesome way. And make sure to stay tuned to my Twitter as well as the Spidey Squad's Twitter for any updates regarding which suit will be posted next for our community photo mode competition. And I know for a fact you guys definitely don't want to miss it. But until next time, everybody, thank you all so much for watching. Stay spectacular, Spidey fans. Peace out.
Don't worry. We're close.
I'll keep at it. Work out some bugs.